coming up here? Are you coming up here as well? We'll try to make sure we're all seated properly.
Okay. Where's the mechitza? No mechitza?
No mechitza. We're not davening.
Hello. Hi, I'm Michael Berlin. Before we get to our panel, I had the privilege with Rabbi Greenberg of actually having a very long conversation with the director of the film in Israel. She was very kind and generous and asked me to basically pass along to you what she shared with me about the film. So, just so you know, this is Moran Makar. And first thing I said to her, the easy question is, how did this movie come to be? She said, this is not about a tribe in Africa. It's my community. It's important to create these images. I had no images growing up that I could relate to. Okay, that's what she thought. She goes to film school, and an activist approaches her and said, would you create a web series about the LGBT plus community? And she said yes, and she applies for a grant, and she gets a development grant to do this film. Something about the documentary is just...
Now you can hear me? Hi, I'm Michael Brown. No. Why didn't I write comedy? I don't know. Anyway, just a word about the documentary process itself. When you shoot 25 to 30 hours of footage for a movie that's less than an hour, you're shooting 4 hours for every 13 minutes of footage. It took her 2.5 years with this footage to find this film or this web series, these 7 vignettes, to finally sort of put it in order. So I said to her, why these 7? Why did you come up with these 7? And she said to me, I wanted to create tiny moments, all stages of life. And then I said, there was one thing I had been thinking about if you were to do an 8th. She said, what? And I said, what about adoption? She said to me, it's illegal for the LGBT plus community to adopt in Israel. I said, that's a conversation for another night, but to me, that was a piece I wanted. And then I asked the obvious question, which is, what has the reaction been in the Orthodox community? This was a longer conversation, but she said they've had 60 screenings. This web series had over 1 million views. I said, well, what was the reaction? She said, you know, the reaction was very split. There were some incredibly positive statements, many along the way, and there were many negative, really hurtful comments that went with it. She said, the rabbis pushed back about 2 things. One, they hated the title. They thought the Holy Closet sort of referred to the Ark and the Torah, and there was some offense to that. The other thing, you know, she said was about, the rabbis said to her in the community, in the Orthodox community, they could not approve what they saw in the film, but they could not deny it either. Okay? So I said, is there going to be a season 2? She said, no. The government just does not want to fund another season of this, and so if they can find other funds, they would. And then she said sort of 2 other things. First of all, she talked about the shooting of this film. The first thing that she shot was the date, the first thing you saw. And Daniel put an ad in the paper and said, who wants to go out on a date? And sure enough, you saw what the response was. The other thing she said was, if you remember in the wedding, it was a very small party at the wedding. It was shot during COVID. And so there were some COVID restrictions to the piece. 2 things I just sort of want to leave you with. One, I said, what's next if you can't do another season of the web series? And she said she wants to do, she's working sort of on a documentary about a shelter with LGBT plus persons thrown out of their homes. That's the next thing. But there was one last thing that she said, and I want to sort of pass this along to you as she said it to me. I said, is there anything about the film that you want me to take away, aside from it being really an incredible experience? And I was very thankful. She said to me, watching this film should make an audience feel both familiar and uncomfortable. It should feel like being a Jewish person in the world today. I leave you with her words. I turn it over to the panel.
Thank you, Michael. I just wanted to say that Michael Berlin has led, I think you all know this, a film series, a film club in this synagogue and beyond. And that is why his words come with a good deal of wisdom and of familiarity with the entire enterprise of relating films to the human experience and to the Jewish experience. So thank you, Michael, for introducing us. My name is Rabbi Steve Greenberg. I am the founding director of Eshel, an organization that works with LGBTQ Orthodox Jews and their families. And we partnered with Moran Nakar and Abigail Sperber to bring this film all over North America, and we are doing just that. The reason that I was so moved by this film is because it really is the very first film that articulates the overlap between queer identities and religious life in a way that isn't dark, in a way that isn't tragic or sad or troubled. It is the first film that is poignant and lighthearted and even funny and allows you to breathe in the space of the overlap in a way that no other film to date has been able to do, either documentary or feature film. I want to share with you that we have an incredible panel tonight. The aim of the panel is to translate the Israeli experience, which in some ways is similar, in other ways is not, to the US scene. And so we have a really marvelous group of panelists here, and at the end, a surprise panelist will join us if we can, encourage him to do so. We're going to begin. As you saw, among the people that I felt most moved by was Bin Nun's mother. And we at Eshel work with parents. We have our national retreat for parents coming up very soon. And our parents are actually, they go through a process of real mourning and struggle, and many of them come out incredible advocates, in some ways better advocates than their children are, for the movement of orthodoxy toward greater understanding and acceptance of their children. I want to first introduce Bonnie Kurnick, who is the parent of a queer religious young man, and she parallels that story and will share it with us.
I didn't hear what you said. What? I know you introduced me, but I didn't hear the last part.
You're going to share.
Oh, okay.
First, respond to the movie in any way
Okay.
you wish to, and share a few minutes of
Sure,
what it was like.
absolutely. I loved the movie. I saw it before Rabbi Greenberg let me take a look, and I was really moved. I think it's sweet, and it shows so many different sides, the mother's side, the siblings, and I thought it really gave a good overview of the various scenarios in people's lives that they have to work out. My son came out, I think it was 3.5 years ago. I know it was Erev Pesach. And he said he wanted to talk to us, to my husband and I. And we had no idea. And he had just applied to a program that he's been wanting to go to for dental school for a long time. I said, are you dropping out of dental school? I mean, that's the only thing I could think of, that what does he want to tell me that's so serious? And he sat us down and he told us. And it was a shock, I can tell you that. It was a shock. I never saw it coming. He thought I knew. I've got a very dry sense of humor, and I said some things that are so innocent that he took, he thought I knew that he was gay. Hadn't a clue. And I also come from a background very, very familiar with gay lifestyle. As a young high school and college person, I grew up in the disco age, so you could tell how old I am. And I went to all the bars with my friends who were gay. They were the best dancers, and you wanted to. They were close friends, very close friends. One of them, unfortunately, passed away from AIDS. And I went to gay bars, so it's not like I wasn't familiar with the lifestyle. I just didn't see it in him. It was, like I said, it was shocking. It took a little while to register, and we accept him. I mean, we love him. He's so happy. The worst thing for me as a parent was when he shared with me the difficulty he had, the struggle he had before coming out. It was eating him up. And I didn't see it. And that was horrible for me, horrible. So I've had to come to terms with that I wasn't there for him in a very, very painful time. But we've gotten through that. He's actually getting married next year. And I love who he's marrying. It's wonderful. It's not the path that I thought our family was going to take, but it's wonderful. And that's all I could say. It's wonderful. We accept him wholeheartedly, and Yadin, and the life that they will have together with us. Thank you.
Actually finding, interesting people to kind of reflect and expand the frames of the film was really important to me. And while in our community, we have our national conference of LGBTQ Orthodox who are gathering, about 120 gather every year. And a certain portion are remaining Orthodox, a certain portion are becoming more observant, and a significant portion are no longer Orthodox. But they want to come back to a community that loves and cherishes the tradition, but they're not observant anymore. And what's really interesting is that the Israelis who we saw don't really have a great cultural space that isn't Orthodox, that is still religious in some important ways. It's just rare in Israel. But here in America, there are spaces. And so we have people who come to our programs that come from Orthodox backgrounds that are now involved in non-Orthodox spaces. And because we're here in Beth Am, was really important to me to reflect that reality here. Candice Levy is a self-described refugee of the Orthodox movement. She attended Orthodox day schools, graduated from Yeshiva University Stern College for Women, and later went on to receive a PhD from UCLA and rabbinic ordination from the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies. Candice taught Jewish studies and rabbinics at USC, Hebrew Union College, and Ziegler, and currently teaches at the Milken Community School. She lives in Los Angeles with her 2 children, Eliezer and Asher, and in her not-so-spare time, Candice can be found scouring LA for the best donuts and latest sneakers. Candice.
That's the best that I can offer. I'm here for the donut recommendations. Is that what it is? Yeah, so I mean, I will just echo, I think part of what you said about the film is that I think, when I remember when Trembling Before God came out and how important it was. And we were so, I think, thirsty for something that reflected our experience. And I think, when I realized that I was gay at Yeshiva University, there were like 2 books that were available about being gay and Jewish. And so obviously I went and searched for books because that's what I know. And to my dismay, like they didn't reflect anything. They were really written for the most part many of the essays were coming from people who belonged to the Reformed Jewish community. And well, that was just as foreign to me as how to be gay. So it was not helpful. And then there was Trembling Before God, which, you know, in some very painful, difficult ways, very much resonated, but there really wasn't anything. And now, you know, to my wonder, you know, I have a bookshelf full of books about being gay and Jewish that represent all different kinds. And I think this movie was so welcome in terms of, you know, its lightheartedness, its hopeful sense. And I think in just the mundane acts of just every day, that it wasn't such an issue. And also I think the representation of Sephardic voices, which is often not something that we see. So as someone coming from a Sephardic background, I think that that's a whole nother layer of the experience. So yeah, it was great. It was great to see. Yeah.
Thank you. Among the most challenging and beautiful segments was the segment with Liraz. And, you know, it's very common in our community to have the alphabet soup of LGBTQIAA. I mean, you could keep going, plus whatever. And the interesting challenge for the Orthodox community, the more traditional community, is that these letters each require distinct halachic engagement. They are not identical to one another. In fact, even gay and lesbian halachic, you know, discourses aren't the same. And so the challenge often in more traditional environments is not to unify these things, but to actually make them distinct. And they become frames of reference so that you can have a rabbi be very welcoming to gay people, but not be ready to address the other letters of the alphabet that are in the LGBTQ, you know, kind of, you know, collection. So it's very important that these kind of frames are also included so that we begin to address the challenges faced by people whose gender doesn't necessarily comport with their experience of themselves in their bodies. And that story is a story that actually this film begins to articulate. It is rarer in Israel for that story to be part of the subculture. And that's, I think it's one of the really important things that the filmmakers have done, is to raise it up into the consciousness of the culture this way. And so I want to introduce Joshua Avishur, an Orthodox, queer, transgender man. He is the parent of 6 children. Yes, I can repeat that. 6 children ranging in ages. I'm a parent too. I have 1. Okay. He's a parent of 6 children ranging in ages from 23 to 5. You started earlier, but okay. The 4 elder children are by birth, and the 2 younger children are by partnership with Rafi, who is also a trans man who gave birth to his 2 children. Joshua has been involved with Eshel and JQ International here in Los Angeles as a lay leader and a group facilitator since coming out in 2016.
Thanks, Steve. The movie for me was, my mom's Israeli. She was Israeli. And so for me, it felt like coming home. I'd had so many of those conversations that they were having. So it was like just echoes and echoes and echoes. And it felt very validating. Really, like, I enjoyed it. A lot of the phrases that the people were using, like when Reut and her sister were having that extremely cringy conversation, where they're both smiling, but the sentiment is so painful. I've had that conversation with my sister who lives in Beitar in Israel, and she's, you know, the from, and yet she still calls me by my name and uses my pronouns. But having had those conversations, it just feels like, yes, that's my life. I've had that. That is me. And you know, the pregnant man story obviously landed very, very strongly. The first feeling I had was kin'ah, jealousy, that he got to do that. I had been out as trans in college in the 90s, and then did conversion therapy and tried to convert myself back to being a girl. I got married. I had 4 kids as a female person. And then when the youngest one was 5, I realized, oh, this isn't right still. And so I came out at that point and I transitioned. But Liraz gets to do it without having to be that woman. And so just like in my kishkis, you know, just that hurts, but also so beautiful. Yeah, that's my thoughts for the moment.
You're going to get a chance to ask each of these people more questions. I promise you. We're kind of attempting to put a lot of people on the panel, so everyone is being very generous with their words, but you can hear more if you ask questions later. So the gentleman I want to introduce now is an old friend, Rabbi Yosef Kanefsky. Was the first brave Orthodox rabbi when we were just starting out Eshel. If I don't get teary, starting Eshel more than 12, 13 years ago. It was a long time ago. And I said, you know, Yosef, and I knew, you know, from yeshiva, because we're both graduates of YU, can we come and do some kind of program in your shul? He said, well, I'm not sure we can do it in the shul, but you know what, we can do it. And we did it, a Shalosh Shudas talk it was, you know, in a warm time of the year. I guess it's mostly warm here, but for me, I remember it was like lovely weather. Okay. And the reason that's important is because 100 people showed up at this person's house, and there were people sitting or standing outside the living room windows that were pushed open so that people could hear. And it was the first time we brought people just to tell our stories in an Orthodox space. And so I'm going to read your bio, but for me, that makes you one of my heroes. Rabbi Yosef Kanefsky was ordained in 1989 at Yeshiva University, from where he received a master's degree in Jewish history. And while he began his career in New York City at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, he came to B'nai David in the summer of 1996, and he has helped B'nai David, Judea, become a kind of voice for Orthodox creativity and innovation. And he has actually come up with a process of discernment that he employed in the synagogue on the issue of LGBTQ inclusion that included the shul and his leadership educationally and otherwise. He is the past president of the Board of Rabbis of Southern California. He's married to Sari Abrams, who is wonderful, and the director of parent and child education at the Pressman Academy. They have 3 wonderful children, 3 wonderful sons, 2 daughters-in-law, and 3 delicious grandchildren. Yosef.
You even asked me a question. I am moved, Steve, to mention that about 30 years ago, maybe a little bit more at this point, when you wrote an article under the pseudonym Yaakov Levado. What year was that, roughly?
1993.
1993. So that was, in my memory, the very first time, even though we knew each other very well at that point, I had no idea who had written the article. But in my memory, that was the very, very first time I felt challenged to think about the issues that you raised about gay people in the Orthodox community having a very tortured existence, potentially, and certainly in 1993 that was the case. And I can still remember, we were sitting in the corner cafe in Riverdale, and you told me that you were gay. And I said, oh, this is real. This is now real. these are now real people, real friends, people I've known for a long time. And I'm a young rabbi, and I have to do something. This is as real as life gets. And the tension that I face continually is the tension between feeling like the grandmother of Elik, the grandmother who says, once I realized, of course I accept. This is who you are, and I want you to be happy. And the grandmother says something about, once I realized that you would not be able to experience love, it turned my whole world around, my whole view around. And that's one half of who I am in this conversation. We did, by the way, show Trembling Before God in the shul. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. I got written up in the Los Angeles Times. That was a story. And the other half is I lead an Orthodox community as an Orthodox rabbi. And Joshua and I have had these conversations. You've been on a panel at least once in our shul as well. And Benji, of course, was a member of ours till they moved away. But as an Orthodox rabbi, I am tasked with administering a system in which gender is a very fixed concept. And the vocabulary around being transgender doesn't particularly exist. And marriage is very specifically defined in terms of gender, a man and a woman, and other models don't really exist. And my task is at one and the same time, and if this sounds like a rather impossible task, well, yeah, this is what makes it so interesting, challenging, and sometimes difficult. My task is to enable LGBTQ Orthodox Jews to not only feel that they have a home, but to know that they have a home, to know that they are being viewed no differently than any and every other member of the community. And at the same time, to administer a system of Jewish law in which gender has a very specific and defined meaning, in which marriage has a very specific and defined meaning. And these two are continuously and invariably in tension. And at the same time, I feel incredibly religiously compelled, halachically compelled, to navigate that tension in the very best possible way that I can, so that people who are my fellow Jews, my fellow human beings, my members, my friends, can walk into our building, can sign a membership form and feel I'm a member like anyone else is a member here, while at the same time being able to say to my community, both within the walls of the shul and to my community, the Orthodox community of which I am, or in which I am a leader, saying we are being authentic to the halachic tradition. And it's a very difficult task, and I feel absolutely compelled to do my best to continue navigating it, being willing to change, being willing to rethink things, as we come to understand, I come to understand, more and more.
I do want to say that Eshel Works as an organization. We have interviewed 263 Orthodox congregational rabbis. in order to kind of help them explore how far they feel they can go and how far they can't go. And we have succeeded in that because we're not judgmental, meaning we say this is a challenging issue, and we do not come to you with demands, just with curiosities about how our people who want to be observant can find a home in your shul and to what degree. And we really have gotten like maybe 1 or 2 refusals. All the 263 rabbis have agreed. I can tell you that the norm now is Orthodox rabbis have this, and it's been over the past 5 to 10 years, have overwhelmingly become empathetic to the human reality, led in part by words that actually Rabbi Kanefsky wrote a while ago, where he said that it's possible that this is a piece of the human condition and we can no longer make gay and lesbian people suffer emotional, physical, and kind of religious harm for our theological comfort. That is already sensibly in the community. It's just that the step of legitimation that allows a teenager to imagine they have a future in that community that is clear has not yet occurred. And that's where you can get some Orthodox synagogues to be very welcoming to singles, but the moment you show up with a partner, then it's threatening because they don't know quite what to do with the image of that family in halachic terms. So I'm just wanted to lead our questions into the following space, and we'll ask a couple of questions, and I have kind of like an introduction to do, but I wanted to start with some questions that you have about the film. And if you don't mind, my interest in this film is that, excuse me, Rabbi, there are no rabbis in this film. This is a film that demonstrates a process of change that is beginning in 2 places, one in family members and the other in individual gay people who are not walking away. And that is actually quite profound, because the ordinary decision for many kids who grow up in the Orthodox world and in the traditional world is, this is not for me, I'm out of here. And the fact that some are staying is making this possible. With that, what I would like to do is, if we have, is there a volunteer here? Can we have someone take the microphone from me and perhaps carry this to various people who might want to ask a question? Thank you. Oh, good. Okay, fine. Okay. Questions or comments? Do I get to choose? You do. Yes, Rabbi, you do.
Thank you. The film, I thought. Well, it is on. I'll get it closer. The film seemed terrific at showing the reaction and responses of close relatives of these people, parents, sisters, but maybe not so much more distant members of the community. And I wondered if you might comment briefly, is there a reduction in empathy and acceptance as you go further away from the immediate subjects, or not?
Josh, go ahead, Josh.
I mean, for sure, my close family members love me and accept me and see me for who I am. And then my really close friends love me and accept me for who I am. And the further away you get, the more likely they are to feel awkward and weird and judgmental. And once you get to this point where they don't know you very well, it's very easy to just see you as not human, not somebody to be contended with.
I'm going to respond and simply say that I don't think there's a rule. In fact, sometimes your uncle can be much better than your dad. sometimes, right, your cousin can be much better than your sister. So I just think that it's also important for us to recognize that there really are no, there are no rules with this. I can tell you that the first person that was really welcoming, so I came out to my mother. She was very unhappy. My mother's a survivor. She did not like the idea. And I was part of another movie, Trembling Before God. It was coming to Bexley, Ohio, where my mother lives, and a block away from where she worked. She called my aunt and said, Gloria, when the movie comes to Columbus, I'm visiting you. And my aunt said, you will do no such thing. Stay in Columbus and support your child. So I just want to say that there are no kind of general rules about who stands by you and who doesn't. It can really be, unique to the family dynamic.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I had kind of the opposite, right? Where I think it was monumentally, and I think in some ways continues to be monumentally harder for my immediate kind of nuclear family, and much easier the further out you go from there. So yeah, like in that cringy kind of thing, like kids, I think, help gloss over a lot of the things. And then every so often it comes back to that cringy conversation where there's like an impasse, and then it's like, oh, okay, but anyway, I love you.
I think the point you're saying is that when you bring grandchildren into the world, that suddenly somehow makes something smoother.
Yes.
No, it's true.
Which is huge.
No, it's all of us have
so
this experience, I'm sure, is that when you bring kids into the world, and even sometimes when you find a partner, they feel resolved more. They think you're not going to be alone, and then they see that there's going to be another generation, and that actually also changes things.
Any other questions? Okay, Larry. We're not begging you to have questions, but if you have them.
Mine is a comment. For me, the overwhelming sense I got from the film was universality of the experiences, not the differences. Everyone has problems with their brother or sister and issues that they confront, and personal issues. Everybody has conflicts with their parents. Everybody, well, not everybody, but many people, when their son or grandson is having a brit milah, they're a little bit concerned, especially if it takes a long time. And every couple has discussions about how to observe Pesach. So, I mean, for me, it was like, it wasn't the stress or the difficult specific challenges faced by the characters. It was just how normal, how applicable to everybody they were. I don't think it requires a response.
Okay, so one more question in the back? Yes.
Oh, Harris.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't mean to make you chase me down. I'm curious because a couple of you are graduates. You mentioned of Yeshiva University. Can you hear me?
Louder if you can.
Can you hear me?
You can try a little louder.
Graduates of Yeshiva University, and you have experiences that we're looking at LGBTQ populace in Orthodoxy. I'm wondering what if you have any thoughts about the LGB club issue at Yeshiva, if you felt that it was, and by the way, I'm not looking for any, like maybe you could have a bunch of different feelings about both sides' approach to the dialogue, because it seems, especially Rabbi Kanefsky, I haven't ever heard you speak, but I've read a lot of what you said. But in hearing you speak just now, I could tell how thoughtful your approach is in trying to be true to Orthodoxy and also see your LGBT congregants as people. I'm curious if you thought both sides just handled it how they needed to, or if maybe there was a different approach that could honor everybody's feelings.
So, I, among so many other YU graduates, signed a letter to Rabbi Dr. Berman, the president, expressing our objection to the approach that YU was taking and continues to take, though it's been quiet of late, I guess. And the reason for that is that there is no, from my point of view and the point of view of many others, of those who signed that letter, there is nothing, there is no reason that people should be left hanging in their identity. In other words, part of the responsibility of the Orthodox community is, as I said before, to ensure that all of its members feel comfortable, at home, seen, recognized, embraced, loved, supported. And if that means having a club, like everyone else has a club, well, then that's what it means. And the kind of reactionary, fearful, what I imagined was a reactionary, fearful, looking over their right shoulder position of the Rosh Yeshiva was, as you said before, Steve, that was, they're taking out their theological problems on the backs of innocent people who are their students and the people to whom they are responsible, and that's unacceptable. Related and unrelated, I do think that this is a multi-generational move, meaning orthodoxy changes slowly, if at all. But if, and I think that it simply would break the system, which would be a bad thing. It would break the system if it changed in ways that it was no longer recognizable to its own constituency. But the constituency keeps flipping every 25 years or so. The generational difference that I see in my own congregation between people, I'll just pick a number, over 40 and under 40. It's a gross oversimplification, but okay. It's meaningful in some way. The difference is night and day. And, I very much feel that the next generation and its leadership will build on the things that this generation and its leadership has done. And it's going to take, a couple of generations, but let's face it, it's been around, the Orthodoxy has been around for 3,000 years, So it's going to take a little time, but it's going to be a relatively short amount of time. And I don't know where it's going to go. But there is an element of patience that I think will be rewarded.
So this is a perfect time to talk about a new generation. So a young man got in touch with me a number of years ago while still in rabbinical school and said, I think we're going to have to talk at some point. And he now has graduated. Rabbi Shua Brick graduated Yeshiva University. What is it, now 2 years ago? And he is a Yeshiva University trained rabbi who, as soon as the klaf, that's the ordination, was dry, came out of the closet and nonetheless nabbed a job in an Orthodox institution, not as the leading rabbi, but as a family educator rabbi. And the rabbi who hired him knew he was gay. So we are definitely dealing with a new generational frame of reference. And it was an accident that Shua told me. He said he's driving down from Oakland, where he lives, to come to LA, and he happened to arrive, how many hours ago? 3 hours ago. So you and I, and all of us, are lucky to have his response both to the film, but also to the state of affairs in the specific question of Orthodoxy's movement.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It's thinking about the future is very much on my mind, partly being the youngest on the panel, not to brag. But just realizing, you mentioned a bunch of dates. I don't know if I should say this out loud. 1993 was the year that I was born. Although my father was in the same Chag Smicha class as Rabbi Greenberg, and so, where was I? Yeshiva University, what a place. And was Rabbi Kanefsky's counselor in camp. Thinking about the future is really where my thoughts are. So I am a rabbi in an Orthodox shul, which I thought would never have been possible. And it definitely is only a possibility, one created by Rabbi Greenberg and everything that he's done for decades to get me to where I am right now. And it's only possible from the life that he has led and all the work that Eshel has done. It's crazy to think, it's right? We celebrated the mitzvah of Eshel this past year. I think it's such a standard that everyone knows of. Like, if you're thinking about Jewish queer orthodoxy, Eshel, its name, it's only been around for 13 years. But I'm thinking about the future. A big thing that helped fix and kind of change my mindset was when I first got to be excited about being queer. And what would that mean for me? Was when I was walking in the streets of Washington Heights. Actually, I was on a walk with David Stein, who's now the head of the Talmud department at Shalhevet. And I had some new Jewish insights, some new different Torah that I came up with. And it was partly because I was learning in the YU Beis Medrash, and I was a gay person in there looking at these same pieces of Gemara that other people were looking at, and I noticed something that no one else noticed. And there was a special pieces of Torah that only I had access to because I had a different perspective. A big part for me was wondering, every Shabbos when I would go out to shul, my mom would always tell me, "Good Shabbos, I love you, I'm so proud of you." And as I was coming out to myself and coming out to her, the biggest question for me was, would my mom still be proud of me? And that was the biggest thing that would weigh on me. And then fast forward, I'm a rabbi in Oakland, and I'm nervous about telling all of my congregants that I'm gay, and I'm worried about, I had this 2-year process of coming out to all my congregants, in which I thought I was going from board member to board member with a liability to tell them about. That there's this thing the shul's gonna have to deal with. And each one turned to me and was so excited. They're like, "You're telling me we have a gay Orthodox rabbi in the Bay Area right now? How incredible of an asset that is." They were so excited. It finally helped me remember, this is exciting. I now think about the future of Judaism and realize, as a rabbi, so many questions and conversations are so old. We've had them so many times. What is the new thing that you get to do? And when it comes to queer halacha, it's just this beautiful, vast, open expanse of untrodden snow. Sorry, I'm from the East Coast, so it's very exciting when it just snows and no one else has stepped on it yet, and you're the first one to step out. It's the new frontier that we now have, is this halacha. I'm so incredibly excited about it. When I came out to the head of the RCA, which I'm a member of, so I felt the need to tell him, the next morning his wife texted me, wanted to set me up with this guy at work that she works with. And to just think, like, when in history has that ever happened before? We were talking about Yeshiva University, and oh boy, there's some complications there. But when I was working there, I used to work in the communications department there, we weren't allowed to use the phrase LGBTQ in our paraphernalia at the time. But since the lawsuit, it would be so crazy if they were avoiding it. So they use it all the time now. And it's funny to see how much growth has happened there just by force. My mom sent me an email that Tuesday night, there's a special LGBTQ dinner being held by Rabbi Blas, one of the mashgiachs of the Wolf campus, is having a special dinner on Tuesday. Because there's so much conversation about it, we sometimes don't realize we're in such a better place. There's only upwards from here. Everyone really has been changing. Just this week, I had 3 phone calls from mothers from Lakewood who heard about me and wanted to talk to me about their kids. And it was the cutest conversations I ever had. They were so sweet. But I never thought I'd be having these conversations with the moms from Lakewood. Just to wrap up all of that, what I really see from this is to summarize a lot of things I learned from, actually at Yeshiva University, from Rav Soloveitchik. He wrote a great deal about unique individuals, that the individual that doesn't fit in exactly, the most unique individual will have the greatest connections to the unique God. That Jews, queer Jews, are not liabilities to our communities. They're actually, the people who don't fit in are our prophets. That Avraham was and Ivri was on the other side, that every prophet couldn't really fit in. The unique individual is the most resplendent individual. That these are Jews who are so committed to their faith, they refuse to leave. These are our heroes. And our communities are going to start realizing that these are not questions we need to figure out, people we need to tolerate. These are our heroes that we desperately, desperately need, and their Torah is essential to the future of the Jewish people. I'm really, really excited about that future, and everyone who's here is really a big part of making that happen.
So I want to thank everyone who came. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank Cheryl Goldman, the sweetest soul in the world. Where is she? Thank you, Cheryl, for making this happen. I want to thank the rabbinic staff and all the staff who helped make this possible. And I want to thank our incredible panelists. Thank you all for joining us. And just the last thing, Shua, I think put a beautiful finish on this, is that we used to think that the goal was to save gay people or to save, trans people. And what we're all discovering is that the goal is to actually unleash the possibilities of the breadth of the human experience, to unleash it so that it teaches its Torah too. And so with that idea, I encourage you to help us move from mere empathy to real embrace, and from embrace to creativity and renewal. And with that, please go to eshelonline.org. If you want to support this kind of program all over the US with this film and panelists like this, please contribute. We could use your support. I want to end by saying that this has been an incredibly difficult 6 weeks for all of us. And the fact that we could just come together and laugh and enjoy a film about the vitality of Israeli relationship and love, the vitality of Israeli society to transcend difficulty with a sense of camaraderie and a sense of filial and parental love. There's nothing more profound about the Israeli society than how connected it is, how much more relationship matters ultimately than ideology. And we hope that we take that message here in the US too, to bridge gaps that are ideological with deeper and more abiding relationships of love. Thank you very much for being here.